love that.
Welcome to the podcast, Meredith.
Hi! It's so exciting.
I'm so excited to have you on here, my Muppety friend. We are quite literally on a porch because you're in Phoenix, Arizona right now, outside in a little covered hangout place adjacent to a home, a porch, if you will, on, in fact, wicker furniture, or at least adjacent to some wicker furniture.
Adjacent to them. You've got it.
Okay, so I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. I've already told you this, but I'm going to tell our listeners, we're going to have another podcast with Meredith and get into the backstory of like how this Muppety, creative, enthusiastic creature came to be in this world. But today I really want to focus on your boondocking adventure for the last year, which is so exciting. It's so much fun to like know you and know someone who's like, you know what, I'm selling everything and I'm going to live on the road. And so I just want to like really give people a framework of like how it worked for you, so that if they're interested in boondocking and maybe like hitting the road in the spring, or maybe now if they're my Australian babes, right? It's spring down there now. Just like, what are those logistics and how does that look? So I want to start with Meredith in corporate America. At some point you told your son, Bruce, who is now 21, I'm gonna like leave my job eventually. So like, you're gonna really be on your own. So like, I know you have intention of like exiting corporate America. Tell me about that.
Right. So in 2015, I was certain I was going to leave. I wasn't sure what it looked like, but my son was 15. Luckily, his birthday was in 2000, so the age is never a problem. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I became a registered yoga instructor. And so my son thought his mom was going to leave this very well-paying job to become a yoga instructor. And when we sat down to talk about it, and I'm talking to him, I realized, I don't know if I can live off 14,000 a year and like still have our home. I don't think that's going to work. Right. So I started to put the motion in place and talk to him about it. And so he was well aware that by the time he was 18, I would have left the corporate culture. And so when it came to that last year of the corporate, and they really kind of knew it was coming and they offered me something more, and I was like, well, actually, I'm going to leave. But I was 40 years old. And so, and I think you know this from your background, because you've been in law, like I very much knew my rights because my job had taught me my rights. So here I was in my mid 40s. They had taught me all about how I was protected after age 40. And I'm like, well, this is going to go down. And it did. So I told them, and they pretty much were like, great, well, go find your job. And so for a year, I kind of like sat around and made a lot of money and didn't find a job. I didn't find a job at all. But to just go back a little bit, I had already looked at teeny homes from like 2013, I think is like the first time it comes up on my Facebook memories, right? Of where I was trying to figure out a way to make it work. So I was posting back then, like if I bought land and placed 3 teeny homes on it, would that be something you'd want to come visit? So that's like one of my original thoughts was I will do that. And so then as my son and I were talking, and he's at this point like 16, and I'm going, well, I'm going to have to get rid of the house, I guess, right? So I had thought a lot about it, but I didn't really know how it would go down. My boyfriend at the time was very generous and offered to let me live with him because I knew I wanted to get rid of everything. So I sold my condo at that point. And at this point, I had downsized from 2 homes, 2 vehicles. I still had 2 vehicles, I guess, but to 2 homes to a condo. And then I got rid of it. I put what I had in storage, and I went to live with him for a year. And when that didn't progress, I was like, all right, well, I still have my dream, right? Like I have this dream. I knew I've always been a gypsy. Before my son was born, I lived all over. And we'll go over that the next time. But, you know, it's always been a way that I kind of see the world. And so, and the partner I was with, as much as I love him, he was not really a travel person. And so it kind of ended, right? And so that happened the month before the pandemic. And so here I was in the beginning of the pandemic, like, I have no relationship. I have no home. I have nothing. I owned a Streamline, right? So I have a trailer. So I am very blessed. I have the most amazing ex-in-laws. And so I put that on their property. where I'm at now and
This is
started to figure
why-
out what I was going to do.
I want to make it clear, this is an Airstream trailer, like one of the steel ones that's super rounded. And if you're early on your journey of like figuring out about RVs and like lifestyle and that kind of stuff, understand that like these beautiful metal concoctions are very specifically shaped. But what I've learned from knowing Meredith and being friends with her and her internet connection is that like these Airstreams are terrible for Wi-Fi. So if you're someone who wants to be a nomad and have strong Wi-Fi so you can like work or connect, really consider whether you really want a metal vehicle. Okay.
Don't get a metal vehicle.
They're pretty. It's nice for the back of your in-laws.
I would never do it again. It's just not practical. I don't, right? Like it's beautiful, and I'm really big on like what I own is very specific, and it's very specific. But yeah, if you are looking at boondocking, I would not get that trailer. I would do what I did, which was get a second vehicle and live out of the vehicle. So yeah, so fast forward. So it was the beginning of pandemic, and I had decided I was going to do this trip. And before the pandemic had hit, I had all these house sitting jobs across the nation. So it was all going to be paid for, right? I was going to do sound a few places, and all that fell through because people don't want a random person during a pandemic in their home. Understandable. So a little over a year ago, I started to look for a truck. In fact, it just came up in my memories. I haven't even owned the truck for a year. And so, isn't that funny? It came up yesterday. The post that I had said was, any women or men who are really good at trucks and can help me find one, I'll pay you. No one did, but that's okay. So I got a truck, and I built it out, and I planned accordingly. And then I went on my trip. Yeah. There's so much to say. I don't know where to start.
Okay, so let's start with, so you decided on a truck as your vehicle. Had you considered like a little Class B or a little baby RV or like a Sprinter van? What was it about a truck that made you decide, yeah, this is the vehicle I want to boondock in?
Money, because my dream vehicle is a Sprinter. So it's all about the money, right? Like when I left my corporate job, I've worked a little. I was a caregiver for a psychic, and I do my sound stuff, but it's all the finance. So my next vehicle will be a Sprinter. In 3 years, you can do a podcast with me. I will have a built-out Sprinter. I already know it.
I love it. I can see it.
Right? It's going to be awesome. And at that point, maybe I'll get rid of the trailer. We'll see. But, who's to say? But no, I really wanted a van or a truck. But the truck was, I knew, going to be the most economical based on having talked to people. And I wanted something that wasn't going to break down on me, right? Like I planned ahead, and this is something I would suggest to anybody is you have to plan for all the shit going down. Like I planned for my truck breaking down, and it did twice. I planned every place I stayed, which I think you and I have talked about before, is because I was in a truck and a female who does not carry, I did not stay anywhere where I wasn't allowed to stay or where I even questioned it, right? Like there would be times I'd be like, this is perfect, I want to stay here, and then I'd be like, I don't know if I can. Like I wouldn't have service, so I couldn't Google at that point if I was in for service or not. And so those times I bailed. I just didn't stay because I had the truck, right? And so if someone knocked on my door, I'd have to get out. That's not good. I don't consider that a safe situation. So there was that. So that's what made me decide on the truck. I also have friends that are nomads or have lived the nomadic lifestyle, and I'd seen the way that they have built out their truck, and I've seen vans, so I knew I could go either way when I found a vehicle.
I want to talk about your truck specifically and how you built it out, because so ultimately the reason why if someone knocks on your vehicle while you're sleeping that you have to get out is because you're literally like, you drive the truck in the front in the cab, and then you're getting into a covered back bed of it in order to sleep. So it is really vulnerable. Like, I mean, that's kind of a thing about being a woman solo on the road, or any person, but obviously like women are prey in this country. Women and people of color are prey in this country. And so really needing to be mindful about that kind of stuff. And so that makes a lot of sense. I love your build out of your truck. Will you talk about like what you did? Like you bought the truck, and then what did you do to make your bed and your storage?
It's amazing. So I have friends actually who sold their truck, and so I use their build out. And so what it is a platform right above where the wheels are. And so it's what is that called? Not wood, it's plywood. Is that what it is?
Plywood?
No. What's that other stuff? Is it plywood?
Probably plywood.
It's a very thin piece of wood, right? And so that goes across the bottom. And then we laid down insulation. And then I bought the most amazing mattress, like no joke. To this day, I wish I could be sleeping on that every night. And it was $200 on Amazon. It was a 4-inch foam, right? So it came all rolled up. And like, that was one of the most fun moments, was me taking that in the back of the truck myself and undoing it. It was like, wow, that was when I knew it was real, honestly, at that point. And then underneath the bed, right? So like I said, that goes above the wheels. So then you have the space underneath, and there's 2 drawers that go the full length of the truck. So I was able to keep all my camping gear. Not that I had much at that point, but I had a little. Able to keep all my food stuff, because as you know, I'm a big foodie. So I had a juicer with me. I had a chopper. I have an oven. I have it all, right? Like, I need my food. I have my apothecary with me. I had an altar with me.
You have your most important
What's that?
stuff. You don't have it all. You have your most important stuff, and nourishing yourself is really important to you. I will also say, as someone who lives in a tiny home, I have a juicer in my house. I have 2 crock pots on my counters. Like, it's like
I've got 3. I get it. Yeah. I got 3 because I have my cannabis one, and then I have my other 2 I cook with. So yeah, I'm with you. And it's but the build out worked out really good because I have all my instruments that I travel with. So I have a back seat in my truck, right? So I put all the instruments in the back seat. I left the passenger seat open because I knew that there would be 2 times when somebody would be traveling with me. And quite frankly, when they weren't, that's just where all my shit goes, right? Like, I'm driving for 4 or 5 hours on some days. So I would leave that open. And then the bed was just there. And so when I would get to my stop, I'd go lay on my bed. It was great. I highly recommend it to anyone who's considering it, and the best part is to try it out ahead of time. Like, that was the other thing, was you saw my road journeys. I don't know if I detailed, I can't recall if I put it online or not, but I took it out twice for 2 weeks at a time, for a week at a time. So 2 total weeks to see all the things I had to do, right? Because there were many things that were not perfect until I took it out, that weren't safe. Like, I realized, oh wait, like, I want to have a lock on the back. Like, I didn't even have a lock at first. So literally anyone could walk by and walk in my truck while I was sleeping. So I got a lock on it. I suggest that. I put carpet on the top. That's the other most amazing thing. So if you put carpet on the top of the truck, Velcro sticks to it. That was a trick I learned. And so that's why I get it to decorate and keep all my artwork on top. I keep all the lights up. I have a stick from my adopted grandchild, but anything I'm given, I can just stick with Velcro, and it's that easy. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's awesome. So not only do you have a cozy place to sleep, you have a way to make your food. How do you go to the bathroom? How did you plan for that?
That's a great question, because I went outside most of the time. And I honestly, like, I'm a very feral person. Like, there's that joke that goes around about 96%. I am literally 96% feral. Like, when I'm in the city, I go to 95. And when I'm outside the city, I'm at 99. So I prefer to squat. Like, even if there's a rest room, I'd rather just squat, like, if possible, except for the number 2, in which case I'd use the restroom. I also have a shovel. And I didn't carry a bucket with me because I have a shovel. So, but I know many people's favorite.
You can carry a bucket. There are options for this. I learned this from my camping days. My camping days continue to be ongoing. And I was also a Girl Scout and a nightlife promoter in New York City, where bathrooms are scarce. So I know how to go I can pee anywhere, but I prefer a toilet. I'll say that my preference is toilet. I'm nowhere close to 96% feral, but it is like, it's very liberating if you can learn to get over yourself and pee outside. Like, the world becomes your oyster. And as someone who is very hydrated and pees once an hour, like, right? Like, it's one of those things where, like, that's for me, with the boondocking desires and my RV dreams, like, I mean, I literally live in an RV, but it doesn't go anywhere, and I don't have a vehicle that can pull it. And having lived in something this size, I don't need this size to be on the road. Like, on the road, you need a place to sleep. For me, a little private place to pee, an area for my cat to be, right, and climate control so my cat can be with me. Anyway, how did you do with climate control?
I was gonna say, now for climate control, I didn't do anything, but they do have, and I could have, because I looked into this quite a bit. I really wanted to get a pet, but I didn't know what I'd be doing afterwards. It turned out to be a good thing that I didn't, right? But what they have now on Amazon is this fan, and it's temperature controlled, and it links to your phone. It's amazing. So you'll be on the road and you'll say, okay, it's time to go do what I got to do, right? Go Planet Fitness and shower or whatever, and you put on the fan and the device and you keep your phone on you, and it literally tells you, hey, it's getting too warm in there, like whatever you set it at, and you know you have to leave and go check on your pet. It's amazing. So they do have that. I did not, however, have that. So for temperature control, I would open my windows. Occasionally I open the back of the truck. Honestly, other than in Arizona, which is like my home base, most places I didn't have to even think about it because they got cold, not hot. Upper part of Michigan was my biggest challenge, the upper peninsula, because it was hot and there were bugs, and so I'd want to be in my truck, and then I'm in my truck. It just that didn't work for me. So I tried to follow temperature, and that's something I would recommend to other people, is like, there are many nomads who follow the weather, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I did it. I don't know why people don't do it, but everyone's got their own reason, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I live in a seasonal village. Like, it started as like just a seasonal RV park where a lot of women from Arizona, actually, that's how it
really?
As of women from Arizona wanting a summer place. And so there's a pretty less and less sizable every year. More people are staying year round, but like there's a lot of folks who prefer it in the winter because it's less crowded. So it's cold.
Oh.
Like it's cold like 9 months out of the year. I mean, I'm be honest, I'm kind of uncomfortable right now. I'm like wearing, for those listening to the podcast, I'm wearing like a cute little sequin butterfly crop top. But like anyway, right? So
you're cold. So it's cold there.
Oh, it's cold. It's getting down to 38 degrees at night, and it's in October, or it's November now. Oh, and by the way, happy birthday, Scorpio Queen.
Thank you. That was awesome. I love birthdays. They're fun.
They're so fun. And what a good celebration. What a great reason to celebrate another year on Earth. Never promised to us. Always a gift.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about like so you got so you had the dream, you got the truck, and you started and you built out, and you were like, okay, and you tested it out. And then what did your itinerary look like? Where did you go? And like, what was your budget, and how did you figure that out?
Oh, budget. So I am very good with the budget, but I'm not. And let me explain. Can I explain that for a second?
Oh, absolutely.
So my whole life lived extremely poor. I mean, we're talking, I got through college on $25 a week, like no exaggeration, that included my food. And I lived that way. So when I rose to corporate America, one of the reasons I did that was because I wanted the security of finance, right? I didn't want to always be wondering where my next meal was or whatnot. So when you say budget, I have yet to look at the final numbers because I don't want to do that. And I don't think I will, because I didn't do the trip for that. So I can tell you my budget was mileage wise, 20 to 25 cents per mile. So when I went to purchase something, like, let's say I was on the road and I'm like, I'm lazy, I don't want to make coffee. $4 in coffee, you know, I kind of, is that really worth it? Like that kind of thing. So everything I did was based on mileage. And I was a caregiver for a psychic. So I had at least 10,000 put aside for this. Like I knew that I didn't want to think about it when I was on the road. And so I did it. The way that I did the trip was I knew I wanted to spend a month in Oregon because for years I had been calling Oregon my next home and I didn't know why. Like it was really random. I have no idea why I did that. I still, like when I drive through Oregon, I'm like, oh, I'm home, even though I'm not, and that's not even my next home. So I had decided to go to Oregon to visit another goddess, Kate. And so my first stop actually though was Saline, the mother of all goddesses, right? Yeah. So I went and visited her the first time, and I did because I wanted to see Joshua Tree. So I got a national park pass, right? Because I figure I'm going to be going across country. So I did Joshua Tree. I visited Saline, And then at that point, I went up through the Sierra Nevadas because I had never done that before. So I thought I'll do that. And then I spent a couple days in the redwoods because I love the redwoods, and I'm so happy I'm going to be moving there. I love them. And then I went to Oregon. And then when I got to Oregon, I had a place where I could put all my stuff. And then I explored more, right? So we drove up, we saw you. I did a few different side journals.
Fun. I loved that so much. Having you and Kate stop by, like just 3 hours, so nourishing, so much fun. Thanks for stopping by. If anybody's on the Olympic Peninsula, I love having visitors in my front yard. And Meredith did a beautiful sound bath, and I will link it in the show notes so you can just like listen to it and bathe in it. It was really profound for me. It like really sent me some places. You're such a great healer.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. It was incredible, right? Like that's, and again, like I kind of feel like that's my home still, that area of the world. So we'll see what happens. Because life is funny like that. So then I told myself I would leave by July 1st. So I had certain dates I had to be places because I had said it that way. So I had talked to a high school friend that I hadn't seen in 30 years, literally. But we have been talking. And so we had talked for the whole year that I was planning it. And she's like, so originally I was going to go to Michigan just to visit her, right? Like that was it. Like, okay, I'll go to Michigan, never gone, whatever. I want to see my friend. And then like 2 months before I went on the trip, Willow says, I've got a college reunion in the Adirondacks. And don't you want to go see Saratoga, our high school town? And I thought, I do, but I don't want to drive in Saratoga alone. And she said, well, then I'll go with you. So that was my next destination. I knew I had to be mid-July-ish in Michigan so that we could make it to New York by, I think it was August. So I originally was going to do Yellowstone and go up to Glacier National Park. And so another thing I'd recommend to people who are doing this is take a look at not only the weather, but of the news in the area you're going to. Because I was really big on that. Before I would go somewhere, I would research their local news. I'd look at their weather. For me, I'd look at their COVID numbers because at the time I was not vaccinated. I am now, but at the time I was not. And I was very concerned, right? So I planned it that way. So I went to leave and I was going to Yellowstone. I'm like, I can't go to Yellowstone. They've got record numbers. This is not going to work. And same thing with Glacier Park. I felt like that doesn't really make sense. So July 4th, I went to the Badlands, which was so cool because no one else was in the Badlands. So I kind of planned stuff that way. And then from there, I broke down in Wisconsin, found out they were not cannabis friendly, but otherwise exceptionally welcoming and friendly. And then I made Michigan. And then from there, I spent 3 weeks there. And that was actually really cool because I'm on another tip for people, especially if you're a woman listening to this. There are groups on Facebook for women like us. There's Road Trip Her. There's a few others. I think you're going to link to me. So reach out to me and ask me, and I will link you to all the groups, all of them, because those groups not only saved me a few times, but also like I've made some lifelong friends. So when I was in Michigan, right, one of the women reached out and was like, I've always wanted to boondock. I see you're in Michigan. Can I come join you? And I was like, yeah, if you bring your own car, because I don't want to drive in a car, right? Like being COVID safe and whatnot. I'm like, absolutely. And so she joined me for like a week on my travels. So that was really cool. Road trip her. And so then we went to Saranac because we wanted to see where the women's movement became. And research that if you haven't, because it's really phenomenal, really phenomenal. And then we went to Saratoga Springs, New York, which is beautiful. And it was so amazing. So I think I got off topic of the question, but yeah, so my plans were I had different places, right? Like my mom's grave I had in Massachusetts. I went to college in Vermont, so I wanted to go see the college, which was kind of funny when looking back at it. Like that didn't mean anything to me. My first girlfriend and her family lives in Virginia, so I want to see them. So I planned my trip by having these people I wanted to see, and I filled in the gaps in between. And I will say that in the beginning of the trip, I thought that the trip was all going to be about the traveling and seeing the United States. And in the end, when people asked me like the best parts, it was definitely I'm even getting teary. It was by far the people, right? Like, I mean, I saw you, I saw my high school friends, I saw my mom and her relative, I saw my ex. Like, it was just like, those were things that at this age, I'm 49, like I have a lifetime of friends, and we didn't have the internet back then. So it was pretty amazing to be able to go see people that even aren't on the internet, right? Because when I got back to high school, like I have many friends who I purposely didn't even post pictures of because they're very private, and I respect that. But had I not showed up, I would have never had that time. So yeah, so that was so great. And then in the end, to finish how I figured it out. So I thought I was just going to do this trip, and we were going to do Glowing Goddess Getaway Retreat in Joshua Tree. And in the interim, I got a job through, I got an interview through Mindy, and who you've interviewed on here before. She's an amazing artist. So actually, can I tell that story? Because that's kind of a funny story. Right. So I was visiting Mindy at the beginning of the trip, and Mindy doesn't know, but I tell everybody this. So I'm visiting Mindy at the beginning of the trip, and we're outside at the river, and she's like, so after all this, where are you going to work? What are you going to do? And I was like, oh, like in a dream world? And I know I said that because I'm certain in my mind it was in a dream world, or in a perfect world, I will live somewhere and I will work for being able to live there, right? And I'll be able to do my yoga and my sound and my Reiki, and then like work with the plant to make money would be ideal. And so a month after I left Washington, I was actually in Michigan. I'll never forget the call. I was like on a bridge. I have a picture of it. And she's like, I'm going to hook you up with this woman. Like the place that you want is there. And I was like, oh my God, I totally didn't believe her. When I thought, yeah, you always say I know of a place, but she actually knew of a place. So at that point, here I am in Michigan, and I'm making plans for my next job. And so by the time I got to New York, we had decided that we couldn't really decide if I was going to take the job without meeting. So even though I had already gone to the Redwoods, I knew I had to kind of do a lot of my trip again. So I started planning how I was going to finish the trip, which was Glowing Goddess, and then I'd go to the Redwoods and do my interview. But Glowing Goddess had to get canceled. And so, like that.
The Glowing Goddess Getaway is a women's self-care cannabis retreat. It's actually how I met Meredith. And we were scheduled to do 3 in-person getaways this year, which all got canceled due to COVID and wildfire smoke, which is super sad. And so Meredith's like plan involved this, like for a while we thought this thing was happening in Joshua Tree. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. So like, a lot of my plan had been, how do I kill time before that, right? And then that got canceled. So I was in Oklahoma working because I needed to make money to get back across the country. In my mind, I mean, not really, but in my mind I did. And another goddess, Kate, who I mentioned earlier, reached out and said, well, since they're not having Glowing Goddess Getaway, and since you need to come to Northern California, my mom on Coos Bay, Oregon says that the house is open to you. So thank you, Nelda. And Greg. So then I decided to plan to go to Oregon. So I left Oklahoma. Like as soon as I knew that, I'll be honest, I was out of Oklahoma within, I think, 2 days. I was done. I was so done. Oklahoma was not made for me.
You went to Oklahoma to do a trimming job, right? So like you kind of had like a gig set up.
I had a gig set up. Yeah. And I could have stayed there as long as I wanted. I totally had a place to live and all that. I just, I have a very hard time with city energy. And so for me to be in a city like Phoenix, I have to be in a very beautiful place like I am right now, like kind of isolated from the city. And then I choose when to go into that energy. And Oklahoma City, you don't really have that choice. Mm-hmm. So I was out of there. So I went to the coast, and then, so that was how I planned my trip. Was some of it was planned, some wasn't. And I definitely, if anyone's watching this thinking about doing this, I highly recommend leaving yourself gaps, because you'll get to places, and this happened to me where I'm like, I don't want to leave. And you'll get to other places where you're like, I'm out of here. And it's hard to say which places will do that to you, you know?
Yeah, it's also really interesting. Like when you plan a trip like this, I did a cross country road trip in my Prius with my dog in 2011. And I felt like ultimately when I made the trip, when I was done, it felt like I had little hearts everywhere in the country, because I had managed to stay with people I knew and loved. Like other than 2 nights I was in hotels, and that was actually a choice. I could have stayed with somebody, but I just needed a little alone space. And it was really amazing. I was just like like when you hit the road, if you have an urge to hit the road, especially later in life, like when you got like a decade or two of adulthood, like you've got friends, you've got people, if you've been living a life like that, to go and connect with. And it's honestly always the best part of a journey for me. I love planning a trip around getting to see specific people, but then also leaving those gaps. This is the beautiful thing about being on the road, is like you don't have to just thinking about like, oh, if I want to go to this place, I want to also go here and here and here and here. And it's so much easier if you just take your little house with you like a little snail.
Yeah. And it's so much cheaper, right? Like so much. Because a few nights I did stay in hotels. Like there were a few times where I'm like, I need a shower. There wasn't a plan to fitness. Or one time when I was in Mackinac Island after all those mosquitoes, and I was like, it's raining. And I'm like, you know what? I freaking deserve a hotel. Like, let's be real. Like,
oh my God, Mackinac Island.
I think beautiful. Phenomenal. It really, and I honestly, like, all of the upper and lower peninsula are beautiful if it weren't for the bugs. Like, and I don't mean to be picky, but I don't like bugs. And I'm not scared of them. I just don't like to be bit by them.
There's a lot of them.
That's why I have this.
Oh yeah, totally. Okay, so then let's talk about breaking one law at a time. We talked about this in person.
That's so important. So important. So years ago, I had been given the advice that you should only break one law at a time. And I thought, well, that's kind of genius, because as a cannabis user, I'm always breaking a law somewhere, right? Like federally, I'm always breaking a law. Let's not pretend that I'm not. And for other reasons. So I went the speed limit the entire time, which I thought was going to be a huge challenge. I really thought like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. People are going to pass me. I'm not going to handle it. No, it was a blessing. I like threw it on cruise control. My gas, like, can we talk about gas mileage? It's true what those old people say. Like, if you go the speed limit, you save major bucks. Like, no joke. I was laughing because I was able to record. So I checked my miles per gallon like every single time because my odometer doesn't work. So I'm one of them, right? And I'd be able to tell like, wow, I was going 75 and now I only got 15 miles a gallon instead of 16 and a half. Like, you know, so it was interesting, but definitely think you should only break one law at a time, because I didn't even get pulled over until I hit the state of Arizona. And I'm sure that was because my comfort level was so high. I was like, oh, whatever, I'm back home. And within a day I got pulled over. And I deserved it for all, I 100% deserve it. I don't blame anyone but myself. And I think it was funny.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So also breaking one law at a time is also important too. I read this in a good weed book once about how if you have kids, you've got to be really careful. It's like you can have kids, drugs, and or guns, but you have to pick two, right? Because like everything you do complicates like legally how the repercussions are, right? So like if you don't want to get caught, just drive the speed limit, right? If you want to speed, don't carry drugs with you. And you were also really intentional about what paraphernalia you brought on the road and like what smokables versus edibles, etc. Tell me about like how you planned in for your trip.
Yes, I did. Because I knew that there were a few times I'd be going to states where no matter what, it's illegal. So when I left, I had actually had quite a bit of cannabis on me. And so what I decided to do for myself, and everyone's got their own thing, was I decided not to travel with more than 2 ounces of flour, because when I researched laws, it seemed like the 2 ounces of flour was kind of the cap. And I figure again, this was all my own mental stuff. I'm not saying it's legit or not, but I figure, a dog comes in, they're going to find the flour, right? Mm-hmm. I did press the rest of my stuff. So I had made a bunch of rosin, but rosin's really small. And so I was able to take all the rosin, put it in a lunchbox, put it in my cooler at the bottom of my food. And that's just something that wouldn't have even come up, right? Like it's not going to get smelled. It's frozen. It's down there. So I felt really comfortable about that part. I also kept everything in the back. So besides the cooler, everything stayed in the back of my truck, so that if I got pulled over, I had nothing in the cab, right? Because the whole concept of like being pulled over and DUI, I was not going to get a DUI. Touch wood, never had a DUI, don't want to get one. So I kept everything in the back, right? Like, and there's, had no reason to do anything but stop if I needed medicine and if I needed it. And of course I had edibles. I have, because of this trip and my dental journey, an insane tolerance when it comes to edibles. So yes, I had them on me. I make my own because of my insane tolerance, but I had started with 4 jars of nut butter. Each one I think was like 4,000 milligrams.
Wow.
And I again,
people who are not cannabis users, 4,000 milligrams, like
an ounce,
a
an
non
ounce a week.
yeah, a non-user would probably, like, your dose is going to be like 3 grams, maybe 5 grams of THC in an edible. So like, it's just funny when you get to a high tolerance, it's hard to get the edibles you need, the medicine you need at a dispensary because they just can't sell it. They make them in these like 10 milligram portions, which is good. It's good for people who aren't, listen, it's better to be safe than sorry, but like making your own nut butter is exactly the way to go when you're a high tolerance babe.
Yeah, and it was necessary, but you're absolutely right. Like I'd see friends of mine, right? Like again, I'm seeing people I haven't seen in 30 years. So I've kind of been known as a pothead my whole life. No joke there, other than when I was in corporate America, no one knew, until the end. But I'd see them and I'd be like, oh, I have nut butter, but yeah, I don't think so. Like if you know your tolerance, and like the people who knew their tolerance, there was, I think, one person I was able to give like half a teaspoon to, because I was like, okay, so here's your, I think it was like 100 milligrams, because there's 100 teaspoons, so it was good, but it worked great for me because I didn't run out until Oklahoma. And so then I was able to get to, which was perfect. Then I got to Oregon and I was able to get it all stocked again. But I definitely think being safe in that situation, right? Like I was towed once. I actually talked to cops quite a bit on the road. Like when I was younger, I was scared of them. I was not scared. Like there was twice I actually walked up and asked them. One of the times was not smart. So in Wisconsin, I walked up to a cop and I said, I'm just curious, like I believe that it's against the law totally. Am I allowed to use CBD? Because I was stuck at they were fixing my car and I was like freaking out, right? Like, and I'm like, okay, I have a CBD pen. Maybe I can get my CBD pen. And the cop looked at me and that it just wasn't like, they didn't even register it. And they're like, we don't allow drugs in our state. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, definitely keep it separate.
And being mindful about that kind of stuff too. And just like what you have and how you're going to get caught, just being really smart. I think this is where these online communities can help a lot too, is just like thinking ahead, thinking through, and making plans. Will you tell me about the bed and breakfast that you're going to land at? When do you get there? And like, what are the offerings going to be like? And how big is the bed and breakfast?
It's incredible. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. It's River Farm Bed and Breakfast. It's the first bed and breakfast in all of Humboldt County, and they've been closed for COVID. And we're reopening March 1st. I will be moving there in January so that we can start setting it all up, right? So there are 4 bedrooms, but we are going to keep it at 3 bedrooms for now so that each bedroom has its own bathroom, completely COVID safe. It's stunning. It's 5 stars all around. It's on a little boutique farm, right? So you can go tour the farm if you want to go see all the plants. You wake up and you just see farmland. It's beautiful. I'm thinking about it. I'm going to get teary. And the woman who owns it is an incredible chef, Desiree. She's been personal chef for over 10 years. And if you go online and you look at the pictures, you'll be like, wow. I've had 2 friends from Phoenix who don't use cannabis, who specifically were like, so if we come there, is that weird? Like, are we going to not be comfortable? I'm like, oh no, you'll totally be comfortable. And they're coming based on the food. So there's no smoking in the rooms upstairs. So there's smoking downstairs. It's very elegant. It's very farmhouse-like. You can smoke all outside. I'm going to have some plants ready. Hopefully by then I'm going to try to pick up a few clones and bring them with me because I can legally grow, and then we can incorporate that into people's experience, because we can't take anything from the grow house for legal purposes. But if I personally have plants, I can personally gift people a bud. And then of course we'll have the leaves for the cooking and high teas. We're gonna offer Reiki sessions and yoga and sound for anyone who wants. I have a beautiful space outside as well as in. And so I'm I'm over the moon, to be quite honest. Like, I don't even believe this experience is going to come to fruition, but I know it is. And it's hard waiting for it, but I'm excited.
What are you going to do for the next 3 months or 2 months?
Well, for 2 weeks, I've been going antsy, and I've already gone to Tucson. So, and that's like 3 days after surgery when they're like, you probably should do nothing. And I got down to Tucson. I'm like, oh yeah, I probably should have done nothing. So I came home. So I have another surgery scheduled. And right now, until then, I am just trying to not smoke cannabis and be calm. I'll probably go to Quartzsite to see a goddess or two. And I'll do some exploring around here. You know, I've got some friends. I've got 2 trainings that I'm so excited for. In fact, so excited. I signed up for the second today. So I'm doing a drum circle facilitation training so I can take that to the retreats, right? So I'm going to bring my drums and everything. We can do a little drum circle. It's going to be amazing. And then I'm doing another drum class as well. I'm probably buying a new drum. Who knows?
Let's be honest. I have a drum. I'm so excited for you to facilitate drum circles.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to hear that.
Yeah, my mom is like, it's so funny. My mom is so generous, but she likes to give you stuff that she wants to give you. So like whenever I have a musical instrument I want, that's who I ask, because my mom wants to give me music. So she's bought me a banjo, which I am excited to learn how to use. And I think was it the same year as the banjo? I think it was the year before she gave me my drum. Anyway, it's like a medicine drum.
What kind of drum?
It's like it's handheld and it's like ceremonial, and it was she and I got certified as a Reiki instructor and then a Reiki master, and my mom was inspired by me to pursue her Reiki master, and she like got connected to the drum maker and just like was inspired to get it for me. I wanted it because I had recognized sound healing was really helpful for me. So just even having a drum that I can play and just get into universal heartbeat has been really soothing. But I am really stoked. Actually, I cannot believe I'm saying this. 42 years old. I used to roll my eyes at drum circles when I was
Did you?
I'm like literally excited at the idea that Meredith knows how to facilitate drum circles for the Glow and Goddess Getaway.
I can't believe you used to roll your eyes.
So judgy about woo stuff and spirituality, and like I did not get it. I was not raised with spirituality. So being in like festival community with people who are like women specifically who are really woo, really, I picked up a button once that says drum crazy, and I found it on something, and I was like, this describes those women very, very accurately. Drum crazy, like people get a drum every time they go somewhere. But now I get it. Like I understand. I'm like, I get it. Okay. Like I was judging before, and I am so open now. So
We had to go through that to get here, right?
it's a nice life when you're willing to change all these like opinions you have and just really open up and soften to the possibilities of who you really are. It's a really beautiful life. And it really comes alive when you have friends like you, Meredith, like who are doing their own thing and like being like, this corporate thing does not serve me. I got to figure out a way out, and then manifesting it just bit by bit and just allowing the unfolding.
And it happens. Like, I'd like to say to any of your listeners, like, all you have to do is speak it into existence. And I think that's important. Like, say out loud what you want. Mm-hmm. There's no reason not to, right? Like, there's no reason. And if you don't want anyone else to know your dreams, I get that. But say it out loud, like to yourself when no one's around, because manifesting is so real. My whole life has been manifested, and good and bad. So I've learned to keep my mouth shut at times, right?
We're always speaking spells over ourselves, and you can either cast spells of possibility or cast spells of limitation. And it was a habit. It was a habit and like a weird like way that I was always trying to keep myself back when I was speaking bad about myself. And it took me a long time to really understand the power of my spoken word and speaking my dreams. And you know what? If you don't have people you can share your dreams with, you need to get better people. You need to find a group of friends who support you and support your vision for yourself and who will vision with you, because that's also the power of like prayer. My favorite visioning exercise, we've been doing this on our questioning reality sessions on the Glowing Goddess Getaway Discord, is like visioning as though something has already happened. So speak the story, like, oh, I remember when Meredith showed up at River Farms Bud and Breakfast. It was just wildly popular, and they were booked out a year in advance, and they set up some special boondocking spots for people to come visit so that a few more people could get Meredith's sound healings. And I remember when COVID disappeared and we were able to have the Glowing Goddess Getaways in person again, and it was super fun, and we got to tour and travel together and heal and connect and have the best time on the road when it was weather appropriate, and we had these beautiful winter gatherings sporadically when we hibernated for the year.
No, I love the speaking it. I was sad. I didn't realize I had missed that Friday night until I realized it was my birthday. So that makes sense. But
it's every Friday night. So like, it's so funny. Mindy said this out loud and I really agree. She's like, getting really stoned and questioning reality is what I always wanted for my Friday nights. And I was like, yeah, actually me too. And like, so we're just doing it. It's fun. It's whatever is organic in the conversation. The first one we had, we've only had two. First one we had like 20 people. The second one, yeah, you were at that one. And the second one we had 5. So like, it really just, it's going to flow and ebb, and it's going to be what we need it to be. And I'm just grateful to be in community with people who believe in something greater than what is presently manifested.
I love that. Yeah. It speaks volumes to me that I have found a group of women with Glowing Goddess where everybody's wanting to question their own beliefs. Not everyone, but a lot of people want to question their own beliefs and continue to grow. And I think that that's, for me, and we've had this conversation before, I'm pretty sure, like, growing is essential to my life. So sometimes, sadly, I don't necessarily carry friends as I continue to grow. And it's one of the hardest things I had to deal with. But growth is a number one, core value for me.
That's good. I'm glad you know your values. And growth is important to me too, because like, you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotten. And outgrowing my friends has been some of the most heartbreaking things I've done. But there are true homies who hang out and who root for you, and who, like, even if you don't connect with in the same way, you still love and can carry those connections too. Like, I was really surprised. I loved that you went to your reunions this summer and you had such a great experience. I went to my 20th high school reunion and I had an amazing experience. I was terrified. I did not think I was going to enjoy it, but I did it anyway. And I'm really glad I did, because I got to connect with people as an adult, in a way that was like much higher and better than how we connected as teens, and it's kind of cool to see like how people end up, but you don't need to carry the weight of everyone's expectations or old friendships. And it's not a failure if a friendship can't sustain growth.
No, it isn't. And I got to tell you that you just nailed on something. Like, as an adult, the reason I want to go back to Saratoga so much is because as an adult, to realize the reality of school. So I don't know if this came up during your reunion, but something that came up with my group of high school friends when we were talking is they all knew my life was shit, but we all thought everyone else's life was wonderful. And it turned out nobody's life was wonderful. Like, there was CPS, and I'm not saying it's good, it's horrible. There was abuse, there was this, there was that. But the point is that, like, nobody knew anything. And so as children, they all knew, like, I was the one who had the shit life and everyone thought they had the good life. But the reality of it is we all have a shit life. And so now as adults, when we get to talk about it, it's like, wow, how did this change? It's very interesting. And I love the conversations with my friends from 30 years ago that I'm still connected with, because there's something raw about someone that knew you then and knows you now. And yeah, I love that.
So good. It's really beautiful when someone can hold you and hold your changing, but also like have that soul connection, the stuff, because there's parts of it that never change, right? The most authentic and pure pieces of who I really am, I feel like I keep resurrecting. I want to be more like how I was when I was 4. I asked my mom actually not long ago, like, actually when I first moved here 2 years ago, I asked her, what was I like when I was 4? Because I had heard some teacher talking about like really connecting to your 4 or 5-year-old self. And she was like, you were really loving and sweet. And like, she didn't say this, but I know from other stories that I was very chatty. And I was an only child. I didn't have anyone else to talk to. So I talked to my mom, and pets and like inanimate objects and flowers, I'm sure. And so now like that's kind of the life I'm living. I'm like trying to just be more loving and more chatty and like more connected and let go of all these other performances that I didn't even know I was playing. Because I think we adopt a lot of personality masks. Okay, Meredith, this is a good place to stop. Do you have any other advice for potential boondockers?
Yes, the most important one that I didn't get to, and that is to download the maps ahead of time, because you will not have service in most places. So download the map to where you're going to, save the GPS, and put the GPS into your map and pin it.
Yes. Yes. So important. It's really what I'm hearing is the most important thing in boondocking is thinking ahead. Right.
Which I don't do very well, but I did on this one. Right. Like, I mean, I do it when I take that back. I do it very well when I intentionally do so. But in my day to day, I just kind of live life. So it was interesting. And then you can link, anyone who has questions can reach out to me by all means. I don't know how you do that, but you can do that.
So you are Hippie, Dippie, Gypsy on Instagram. That's a great way to connect with you with the DMs. I'll put your email in the show notes too, so you can just email. You don't even have to be on Instagram to email Meredith. Also, if you want to do sound healing type stuff, Meredith is just, I can't recommend her sound healing enough. Like such a gift you have. And let's see, and I'll put a link to River Farms Bud and Breakfast also. And
awesome.
Right. And so like,
yeah, come see me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, come see me. March 1st, we're open. It's gonna be lit, like so phenomenal. Yes, you gotta come. We're doing puff and paints, we're doing craft stuff, everything.
I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm so excited for you to be living this level of your dream. And I'm excited for the prospect of another episode with you sometime in the future, which I will also, I mean, people should listen and like and subscribe and all the things, but I will also put a link to that episode if you're listening to this in the future, in the future, and I'll put a link to when we go back in time and really delve into Meredith's backstory, which is fascinating and magical. I love you so much, Meredith. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. I love you, lady.
Yay. And I love you all for listening. And I'll see you next week.